Good afternoon or good morning, depending where you are in the country. My name is Darina Semyonov. I'm Agewells Policy and Knowledge Mobilization Manager. And although we're meeting virtually, I want to acknowledge that we operate in the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations which have cared for the land for thousands of years, including the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And I recognize the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and this land remains the home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum, which is an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land today, and you may live and work in different territories, so we encourage you to reflect on the land on which you're located and to consider your relationship to that land and to the people who are the traditional keepers of that land. So as a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded and posted on our YouTube channel in the coming weeks. In the chat, I have my colleague, Carolina Yaloska, who will be providing you with some further links to information throughout the session, and she can also help answer any technical questions or questions about the Zoom platform that you might have. So before we start going here, I'm going to introduce you to Agewell, Canada's Technology and Aging Network. And yes, we can see if we can add those closed captions in Hajar in the chat. So Agewell's vision is that Canada's leadership in technology and aging benefits the world. And our mission is to continue developing a community of researchers, older adults, caregivers, partners, and future leaders. And our goal is to accelerate the delivery of technology-based solutions that make a meaningful difference in the lives of Canadians. On the next slide, you'll see our vast network, which has over 760 trainees, over 250 researchers across 45 plus now universities and research centers in the country. I believe we have now 57 startups that we support, 4 national innovation hubs, and over 420 partners. But most importantly, there are now, I believe, over 5,000 engaged older adults and caregivers in our network, which is what we're really excited about. And so before we get started, I want to remind you, if you don't already know, that Age Tech Innovation Week is happening from October 4th to 8th. This is an event that is free and virtual, hosted by Agewell. It's going to have a lot of really exciting sessions and talks on topics ranging from long-term care standards to combating ageism to entrepreneurship in the age tech space. And we'll also include our National Impact Challenge finale. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists to today. And so I want to start with Paul Lee. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself to our audience and tell us what a day in the life of Paul looks like.
Hello. So my name is Paul Lee, and hold on a second, sorry. First of all, let me give you a little info about myself. I'm 69 years old, and in 2010, when I was 58 years old, I suffered a massive stroke, and it left me with vascular dementia, some visual deficits, cognitive issues, short-term memory, and for 6 years, life was hell. I wasn't, if it wasn't for my daughter teaching me how to live, which included cook, doing laundry, even my computer. It was very frustrating. Yep.
And so what does, thank you for sharing that with us, and what does a typical day look like for you after this time?
I like to go for walks. I attend a lot of meetings. I make my own meals, such as always with meat, vegetables, and potatoes. I'm currently renovating my kitchen, trying to improve my apartment. I'm a Toronto sports fan, so I watch all the Toronto professional teams, and I watch movies. And at the end of the day, I like to have a sip of whiskey.
Amazing. That sounds excellent. I think you and I are going to have to chat about tips for improving our kitchens. I'd love to hear more about that at another time. So next, I would like to introduce Dr. Virginie Kobigo to tell us a little bit about herself.
Hello, bonjour. So I'm Virginie Kobigo. I'm an associate professor at the School of Psychology at the University of Ottawa. And I'm also the director of Open Collaboration for Cognitive Accessibility, which is a one-stop shop for cognitive accessibility resources, expertise, and advice. And so I'm very fortunate to lead a team of advisors and specialists in cognitive accessibility who believe in a world where in a world that is more accessible to persons with a variety of cognitive abilities. This is important to me because I have met many people with a range of cognitive abilities in my life and learned from each of them. I also had a brother with intellectual disability, and so I know how he enriched the lives of his parents, or our parents, and his brothers and sisters. But I also know that things would have been much easier for my parents and my family if we would have lived in a world that is more inclusive and more accessible. So that's why this is important to me and to many other citizens. I do research on how to improve the social inclusion of persons with cognitive disabilities. And in my research, I have tried different ways to meaningfully involve persons with a variety of cognitive abilities. And so I know firsthand that it is not easy to make our processes and practices accessible. It is not easy to slow down the pace of our work to allow everyone to process the information and contribute. With Open, I try to share what I have learned and improve what we know already about how to meaningfully involve persons with a range of cognitive abilities in the innovation that concern them. And I will tell you more about Open later in the discussion, I'm sure.
Thank you, Virginie. And our final speaker and panelist today is Fatou Ba. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I am Fatou, and I am a cognitive accessibility specialist and the communications manager for Open Collaboration for Cognitive Accessibility. I've also been an Agewells trainee since 2019. My research interests lie in the cognitive accessibility of information and communication technologies. And I obtained my bachelor's degree in biology and computer science at the University of Ottawa. And then I then completed a certificate in applied computer science at Tillek University before I hopefully start graduate studies in January. In my free time, I love to tinker with electronics, especially building small robots. So yeah, I look forward to speaking to you all today.
Great, what a great hobby. I would not have a clue on how to tinker with robots myself. So that's excellent. So as we go to the next part of this session, I'm going to ask Carolina to put up our poll. So we're really interested in who is in the audience. So we ask that you select which role best describes you, and you can select more than one role. So that poll should be up right now. And while we're doing that, I want to invite Virginie to give us a brief overview of what cognitive accessibility is and why it matters.
Sure. So before we start our conversation, I thought that it was important that we give you a brief definition of what cognitive accessibility is. To illustrate what it is, I wanted to start with a few examples of when we struggle because the environment is not cognitively accessible. So I was wondering if you ever had a moment where you hesitated before opening the door of a public washroom because the sign on the door was ambiguous and you were not sure there were truly washroom behind that door. Or perhaps you often get lost in a public space like a hospital, for example. I know that I often get lost in hospitals or universities where I spend a lot of my time. Perhaps sometimes you find your TV or your smartphone difficult to use. I know that personally, I ask my partner for advice, tips, and help with technology regularly. So those are examples of when the environment is not as accessible as it should be or could be. And if it is a struggle sometimes for persons who are considered neurotypical like myself, we can imagine how this creates unfair barriers for persons who have cognitive disabilities or dementia. And so cognitive accessibility is about making our environment easier to navigate. It's also about providing information in a language that is easy to read and understand. It's about slowing down our processes, our speech as well, and about integrating technology to support the autonomy of people of all cognitive abilities, and doing so with respect and ethics. So that's what I would like us to keep in mind as we continue our discussion today on the topic of cognitive accessibility and how involving persons with dementia or cognitive disabilities can help us improve our environment and its accessibility.
Great, and if you could tell us a little bit more about what is the open collaboration for cognitive accessibility and how can we build a more accessible environment? I think we can all relate to some of those examples that you just gave. I know I've been lost in a hospital more than once. Some hospitals will try to color code, different parts of the building, hoping that that helps, and you can still get lost. So tell us more.
Sure. Well, so the problem with cognitive accessibility is that we actually don't know much about cognitive accessibility. We don't know what we should do and what the environment should look like to be more accessible. So we have to build that knowledge. And the only way to build that knowledge is with persons who are living with dementia or cognitive disabilities, to make sure that we hear about their struggle, but also about the solutions they have thought about. So that's why we have created open collaboration for cognitive accessibility, thanks to the support of Agewells, the University of Ottawa, and many partners. And we believe that open can be a place where we bring together persons with a range of cognitive abilities, researchers, accessibility specialists, and merge our knowledge to inform innovation, to inform the development of solutions that are more accessible to persons with a range of cognitive abilities. So that's why and how we have created Open. It's by a collaboration with many partners and stakeholders, including persons with a range of cognitive abilities. And we employ persons with cognitive disabilities and dementia to test products, to test services, to test the built environment, and provide their feedback to our customers on their experience using the product, the service, or the environment. And then we provide feedback and recommendations to our customers to improve the solution and better respond to the needs of users with dementia or cognitive disabilities. And I think that's what I wanted to say, to introduce you to Open, which is a social enterprise that has been created early in 2021. So we are very early in our existence and still building our network and expertise.
Thank you, Virginie. And so now we'll move to kind of an open discussion, and I encourage those of you watching to ask any questions as we go through our talk today in the Q&A function. And if you have just a comment or a resource that you want to share, please use the chat. I'm going to move now to asking some questions about Open and experiences with Open. So Paul, could you tell us a bit more about how you got involved in the work and about your role as a cognitive accessibility advisor for Open? And I'll ask you to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Sure. So my close friend and mentor, Ron Boleno, he's the one, he's always connecting the dots. Recommended I reach out to Open to try out a new medication reminder app. And as someone with cognitive challenges, my role is to test new products, evaluate the feasibility of the products, and provide feedback. Sorry, need my eyes. Okay. I've had some meetings with the Open team and the innovator.
That's great. So it sounds like you're really kind of getting a hands-on experience with some of the products. So why did you decide to work with the Open team? What motivated you to do that?
Okay. Because they were evaluating two products that I was interested in. One, I was regularly forgetting to take my meds, and this bothered me. And they were involved with an app that called Tom. It's an acronym. No, it's not an acronym. And also they're interested in evaluating the Amazon Alexa.
That's great. So thank you, Paul. I'm going to ask you the next question there. And so can you tell me a little bit about what your experience has been working with the Open team?
Okay. I found them very patient and understanding. They're open-minded about my suggestions, and they were very appreciative.
Great, thank you. So I want to pass it over to Fatou now. So tell us about your experience working as a trainee with Open, and now as a as the communications manager. You know, I'm being told that it's an experiential platform. So I'm really interested in hearing about how Open can benefit from the expertise of trainees and vice versa.
Yeah, so I was actually involved in Open since the creation and now in its continued development. So every step of the way, as a trainee and the other trainees who were involved, we felt like an integral part of the creation. I also got the chance to apply a lot of theoretical concepts I've learned in school, to create the Open website, to create our database of advisors, lead testing projects such as the MaxMinder, and also work on the testing of the Amazon Alexa. So I really got a hands-on experience that I would not have gotten into the classroom. It also allowed me to develop a lot of my critical thinking skills, leadership, and I find myself having to use my creativity a lot. I also deepened my knowledge of cognitive accessibility, especially with working with the advisors. When we were testing apps, sometimes they would come up with solutions to problems that I would not have thought of. And that's because of their own lived experience. And no matter what I learned in my classes, I don't have that experience. So having that collaborative work with the advisors was extremely useful to my professional development. I also got to do some program evaluation. So really dip my toes in a lot of different areas of research, which was really great because I came in kind of having a clear idea of what I want to do in the future, and working with Open has really opened my eyes to what is out there and the work that is being done in cognitive accessibility and inclusive research. Yeah, so with the collaborative approach, I learned a lot. And I find that the relationship with Open and its advisors is very symbiotic relationship, because they did benefit from our diverse expertise as trainees. So while I got to deepen my knowledge of web accessibility and accessible design and web design for the website, Open also got to have a website that's beautifully designed and accessible. So it kind of is a very symbiotic relationship. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So both Paul and Fatou have mentioned some different technologies that have been tested out and that are being worked with. So Virginie, can you tell us a little bit more about what Open is doing in terms of technology and accessibility?
Yeah, so Open is not specific to technology, but it's certainly a need to improve the accessibility of technology. And thanks to Agewells, of course, we have developed a strong network in that field. But what we do is that we, as I said, we employ persons with a range of cognitive abilities, and we test for our customers products or services or the built environment to get access to the user experience of users with cognitive disabilities and dementia. We also offer services to adapt text in easy read language. And we also welcome any other ideas of need to involve persons with dementia and cognitive disabilities in innovation. In terms of technology, so we respond to demands from our customers, and we offer to our customers some information on the possible usefulness of the solution they are developing or designing. And we again involve persons with dementia or cognitive disabilities to test the solution and provide feedback to the customer. In the past months, just to give examples, we have, and Paul and Fatou have mentioned already those two projects. We have tested an app that was called Tom at the beginning, that is called now MaxMinder. And that app has been developed with cognitive accessibility in mind. We have worked with the developers over a few years to really understand how it could better serve the needs of persons with dementia and cognitive disabilities, especially in terms of their medication management, but the app does way more than that. That was the original idea, but again, they responded to the needs of the users. And then it was tested by persons with a range of cognitive abilities to make sure that it was usable for them and practical and responded to their needs. And we have also tested Alexa and the Amazon smart speaker Echo Dot. And again, we tested Alexa with a crew of advisors with a range of cognitive abilities to better understand the struggle they had when using Alexa, and also how it could be helpful to them in terms of improving their inclusion or their autonomy.
Great. So it sounds like a really comprehensive kind of approach to testing those technologies. So that's awesome. I'm going to come back to you, Paul, and ask you, so you talked a little bit about testing MaxMinder and Alexa with the open team. Could you tell us a bit more about what that looked like and how you worked with them?
Well, first of all, I learned to be a tester for innovation, and my feedback is valuable, and that I can be of help to the innovator. In the case of the app, Tom, I would open it up and add my meds and the time of day that I take them. And Tom would remind me, whether it was in the morning or afternoon or night, to take my medication. And one thing I like to say is that I would like to see a button on the app to show that confirmation that I took the medication. I think it'd be very beneficial. And it even reminds me to go to sleep.
Yeah, that's great. I think sometimes we all need that reminder, right? At the end of the day. So that's really excellent. I want to ask too, Fatou, if you want to chime in here, just about what that looked like, in terms of meetings and like engaging with the innovator, but also Paul, and what that looked like in practice.
Yeah, again, it was a very collaborative process. So us as cognitive accessibility advisors, we did test the app on our own first, just to get our own idea of what it was and potential issues. And then we had our advisors test the app for a set amount of time. I think it was about 2 weeks. And we met with them frequently to gather their feedback and potential improvements to the app, which we then relayed to the innovator. And we did have 2 ways of reporting. So we also had a survey that they could fill out. So yeah, it was very a collaborative process, just being there to gather their feedback on how to improve the app. And for me as a trainee, I think it was also an exercise in inclusive research and how to conduct inclusive research, especially on how to recognize the needs of our advisors when it comes to the interview process, how to design an inclusive, inclusive research questions, and make sure to recognize the needs during the process to be able to gather as much information as possible, but also not to exhaust our advisors. So it was a very collaborative effort and a very good exercise in how to conduct inclusive research, I find.
Yeah, great. Paul, I'm going to ask you, I think, 1 or 2 more questions here on this. So it sounds like you learned a lot in this process. You're giving valuable feedback to the innovator. And so I'm curious kind of what your thoughts are on technology. You know, did these products help you out in your day-to-day life?
Yes, it did. I've always loved technology, and it is an integral part of my life. It makes my life easier, less stressful, and I don't know where I would be without it.
That's great feedback to hear. And so the other question I want to ask is, what do you think the Open team learned from you and the other advisors?
Well, I think they found out the needs and abilities are different with each person, and they also need to be flexible.
Yeah, great. So important learnings for the team. And I think, you know, it's so important to get, you know, as Virginie was saying at the beginning, just a wide range of perspectives on the technologies to make sure that, you know, they don't work for just one person, but for everyone, right? Fatou, I know that you want to develop a career in technology and accessibility. So how has your involvement in Open and Agewell changed how you think about your career path in the space?
Yeah, prior to my involvement with Agewell and Open and Virginie's team, I had a very hard sciences background. So I just had a very focused view on seeing myself working in a wet lab with the lab coat and the pipettes. And that was my dream, to work in bioinformatics. And I had no idea as to what transdisciplinary research was, or that it was even a thing that existed. But during the last year of my undergrad, I started volunteering for Virginie's lab, which totally opened my eyes and made me discover a passion for accessibility and how I can merge my love for technology with social sciences research. And that year I ended up attending my first Agewell conference, which was even more of an eye opener, because I got to meet with researchers and other students that were building innovative technology solutions and services to promote healthy aging, which made me realize that I could do that too. I don't have to be just a lab rat in the lab all day. That I can use my love for technology and social sciences to make a real world impact. So I think now where I am is that I want to hopefully in the future create accessible technology, assistive technology solutions that are cognitively accessible by design, because I find that I do have this unique background at having the technological skills, but I also learned a lot of the social skills from my work with Virginie. So being a developer, doing technical things with that mindset, I find is very needed in the industry. So yeah, now I see my career path as less linear, but kind of constantly evolving with a mix of technology development, social sciences research, science policy, and maybe, who knows, one day Open will be testing technology that I created. So yeah.
I love that. That's a great goal. So I think for this next part of the hour that we have, we're going to move into some audience questions. And I see that we have one, so feel free to ask your questions in the chat or preferably in the Q&A. And yes, in the chat, folks are saying sounds amazing, Fatou, so I agree. So we have a question from Jay. Love the discussion. We'd love to hear what the team has seen or heard in terms of accessibility and artificial intelligence recommendation and / recommendation engines. So kind of that algorithm-based engine. And maybe you can even describe what that is a little bit, Virginie, for those who might not know.
So we don't have, as I said at the beginning, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of knowledge on cognitive accessibility. It's an area where we need to develop the knowledge and the guidelines So there are very few guidelines and best practices. So I cannot offer you a guide. However, we have learned with the testing of Alexa, for example, how the cognitive accessibility could be improved. For example, improving the way the AI can understand people who have difficulty articulating. But it's also about helping the users use the solutions in a more efficient way. So we all tend to want to speak in sentences to the machine, but the machine doesn't care about the sentences. So if we use specific keywords, we can make the machine work properly without using the full sentence. And for people who have a hard time accessing vocabulary or again, articulating, that might improve their use of the technology significantly. But I think it's, and the other point I wanted to raise is the ethics of AI. It is discussed a lot for racialized groups, for example, but I don't think it is discussed enough for persons with disabilities, and specifically persons with cognitive disabilities. I think we need to pay a lot of attention to the ethics of AI, of artificial intelligence. In that sector. But I think I will let Fatou add to what I just said, because Fatou is certainly an expert in the field now.
Yeah, so just to add to everything that Virginie said, I think it all comes down again to inclusion, because we do see a lot of algorithmic bias when it comes to people with disabilities using AI technologies, whether it's with the technologies not understanding them, or when you look at certain companies that will use AI in their hiring process that will not recognize certain movements that, let's say, autistic people will move a lot more or will look away from the camera, and they will kind of factor this as something negative, because these algorithms were not trained with data that includes people with disabilities and people with cognitive disabilities. We are seeing it more with racialized groups, but I think it again comes down with having the algorithms trained with data that includes people with disabilities, so that when it comes to these situations, they won't be discriminated against because of their differences, but the algorithm will understand that it's not something completely negative. So like Virginie said, there is a lot of room to go and a lot of ways to go, but I think it starts again with the inclusion of this population in the design of these algorithms.
Great, thank you for that. And it's such an important piece of that to recognize, and I'm glad there's a group like Open that's really looking closely at that. So we have another question. They say, sounds like a wonderful initiative. Thank you for sharing. They're wondering if you can comment on the hiring process and compensation provided to the advisors. Do advisors get to keep or continue to have access to the products after their testing is completed?
Yes, sure. I can explain a little bit better how we work with advisors. So we recruit our advisors through our network, Agewells, but also we have a very large network of community partners, advocacy groups, not-for-profit organizations providing services and supports to persons with dementia or cognitive disabilities. And so we recruit through our partners. So we don't have to label publicly persons with dementia or cognitive disabilities. This is very important to us, that we don't, we make a significant effort not to labeling anybody without their consent. So that's how we work for the recruitment, and then people contact us if they have an interest. We also have a website, and through the website we have raised some awareness, and people have contacted us to get more information. Our advisors are paid on a contract basis. We are not wealthy enough yet to offer a regular employment, so it's a contract-based employment. And depending on the contract, people are paid for the number of hours they work for the contract. Some contracts can be very short. For example, today Paul is paid to be with us, and so that's a very short contract, just a few hours to get ready for the presentation and be with us today. For testing other products, it could be more hours, and therefore it's a significant contract. They are paid, they are currently $15 an hour. We pay above the minimum wage, which is the higher in any Canadian province. We hope to increase the salary significantly, especially for those who have worked on several contracts with us and develop a better expertise. As we grow, it is certainly part of our future and our growing. What else could I say? There was the last piece of the question. Can you remind me, Dorina? There were 3 pieces to the question.
Just about whether advisors get to keep
oh, yes.
the products.
Yeah, usually they can keep the product after they have tested it. Those who have tested the Amazon smart speaker kept the device at the end of the testing. So yes, it is usually the case. Yes.
Great. Yeah, and I see Paul nodding yes. So you've got your device there. Great. So another question here from Isabella. Do you have any processes for including people who do not use words to communicate on your self-advisory boards? Have you thought about that?
It is certainly more difficult when we don't have access to language, but there are other ways. For some individuals, we have worked with their caregivers or a close family member to have access to their experience and through the observation of their caregivers or family member. But that's not ideal because it's not their own perspective. Open doesn't pretend to have all the answers to those very complex questions. We want to learn as we work. It's really the intent of Open, and it's certainly an area where we need to develop better practices to inform the involvement of users who don't speak or have a very limited access to language. This being said, I didn't think I would mention my PhD thesis in this presentation, but when I did my PhD thesis, I worked on how to determine vocational preferences in people who are nonverbal, so only by using observation. So it is feasible when you know what to observe. The problem is that you really need to make sure you observe the right thing. So you need to do some research, or we need to do some research to really understand what we need to observe. So for example, in my PhD thesis, before I started the experimentation, people were thinking, well, we know if he or she likes his job because they're going to smile when they work. And smiling when you work has nothing to do with your vocational preferences. It's about your contact with your coworkers, for example, and how good your relationship is with your colleagues. It's not about you like or not doing that specific tasks. So it's not the right thing to observe. We have to observe something else. But if we follow our intuition, we might get the wrong answer. So in short, yes, we want to involve persons with a range of abilities, and those who don't have access to language must be included as well. how we do it, we have ideas, but we certainly need to improve our processes and practices. Fatou, I don't know if you wanted to add anything, or even Paul, you might have ideas that you want to share with us on that point.
Yeah, I think Virginie covered everything. For the testing, we did have some participants who were non-communicative, and for the smart speaker, we tried to get them one with a touch screen, so they would touch and don't have to speak with them. But to get their feedback, we still had to go through the caregiver. So it is a very difficult area, but that is something that we're working on improving.
Great. And Paul, did you want to add anything there? And just make sure you unmute yourself. I know that pesky mute button.
Yeah. The only other thing I would like to add is there's one product that I would like them to get involved in developing, and it's a smoking cessation program. Unfortunately, I started smoking again, and I want to quit, but I tried a product 15, 20 years ago, and it gradually reduced the number of cigarettes I had per day, and it actually worked. I did quit. Mm-hmm. So if I could go back in time, then, you know.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. You know, it's also, when I think about all of these products, we often get asked about integrating the products, and a lot of folks, you know, want some of these technologies to work together. And so I think that's kind of another step into the future is you know, how do these things talk to each other really, so that you don't have to pick up something new for each specific kind of purpose. So that's great. And I see some activity in the chat, which is great. We've got someone in the audience talking about documenting how the facial and body communication of older adults with dementia can be read artificially. And someone is working to understand how folks with dementia react to their immediate material environment. So that sounds like very interesting research and you know, related to what we're talking about today. So really, really great to make that connection. So we've got just a few minutes here left to close our session. It's been really, really interesting to hear about the open collaboration for cognitive accessibility. I feel like we've all learned a lot, and our audience has learned a lot. And so as we close, I want to invite Paul to tell us some final thoughts from you on how your work with Open is helping you stay resilient and train your brain.
Okay, I thought I was on mute.
No, you're good. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so with Open, I enjoy working with them to evaluate products. It forces me to think. In the sense, life is better. There's less stress. Also with Open, problem solving by giving suggestions to resolve issues keeps my brain working. It doesn't rest.
That's great. Yeah, it's the collaboration. You know, sounds really fantastic, and it's something that I'm sure other advisors are also benefiting from. So I want to hear from Fatou. What are you the most excited about in terms of next steps for this work and this collaboration?
Yeah, definitely diversifying the type of clients that we have and getting to learn about how cognitive accessibility works in, let's say, built environments, in homes. And yeah, just watching Open grow and learning more about cognitive accessibility and getting to work collaboratively with our advisors again to test, build environments and more technology.
Great. I see lots of folks chiming in the chat, which is great. Virginie, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us? Any kind of experiences from working with the group of advisors that you have on your team, and just general next steps for you?
A few years ago, thanks to Agewells and Fatou and Agewells, we have not mentioned, but is also a core team member. We had that crazy idea of Open, and we all believed in it and worked very hard. And I'm really touched by the reaction of the community to our idea and the way we work to improve the cognitive accessibility of our environment. I think we have to work together, and working with Fatou, with Paul, our other advisors, and our many partners convinced me that we need to bring our heads together, because no one has the solution. It's by bringing our expertise together that we can really make a difference. So I think the future is bright, and we welcome any new partnership, collaboration ideas. Please contact us by email, visit our website. We have a newsletter as well. Please stay connected with us, because we want to learn from you as well. And before we finish this conversation, I wanted to take some time to thank you, Dorina, and the Agewells crew for organizing this webinar. It was a really fascinating conversation, and I'm really glad that you gave us some visibility. So thank you very, very much. I also want to thank Paul and Fatou for presenting with me today and providing their perspective. I think that together we have demonstrated how at Open we try to develop or build a world that is more accessible. And I would like to extend a special thank you to Paul, because when we were preparing this presentation, we met a few times, and Paul showed how MaxMinder and Alexa are integrated in his life, and how technology really helped him function in his daily life and stay resilient and active and positive. And Paul, I really want to thank you for your testimony, because I do my work, I do my job to improve the lives of people who have a range of cognitive abilities, and hearing from you that it does make a difference is really, really rewarding. So thank you very much, Paul, for your contribution to our team.
Thank you, Virginie, and also thank Tom. Yeah, Open, sorry. All the team members for Open.
Thank you.
Great. And so thank you to all of our audience members joining us today. We are sharing in the chat a link, which is a link to a short evaluation. It should take you a couple of minutes of today's webinar. And we'll send out some of these links and resources that the Open team has been sharing with us by email as well. So thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Paul, Virginie, Fatou, for a great session today.